Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Do you know what? At this moment, I don't even know what I'm going to call this video. So welcome back to Big Mouth. You can continue the conversation over on my Twitter at Movies TV Mad. So BBC America, I have a challenge for you. Obviously, we're talking about Doctor Who. You talk about representation, you talk about demos. Prove it. Prove that you care about representation and cast Peter Dinklage as the next Doctor. That would be what? The 14th Doctor, would it? Whatever. Now, some of you are going to say, you can't have Peter Dinklage, he's American. I don't care. Whoever we cast, whoever gets cast, someone's always going to have an issue with it. We've got the Jodie Whittaker situation, which has been explosive. It's divided the fan base. But at the end of the day, she's still there for now. And who knows what's going on with season 12 of Doctor Who. It's one of those things. I think it's got to be one of the longest Doctor Who shoots I can ever remember. There's certainly been problems there. But I think Peter Dinklage should absolutely be the next Doctor. Why? If you have any doubts about what I'm saying, just go and watch. Go on YouTube. I'm sure there's loads of kind of edits of Tyrion. What he did with that character was amazing. Of course, it's in the writing as well. But his performance was wonderful. We know that Peter, thanks to Game of Thrones, can put on a great English accent. He can do it all. You talk about representation? Well, I mean, look, what do you call someone of Peter's height, of Peter's disability? People normally call that kind of thing. Is it a dwarf syndrome or something? I don't know what it is, and I don't want to come up with a term that could be offensive. But basically, in a way, he is disabled, right? So it doesn't stop him from doing the things everybody else does. But one of the things that is about Peter is that's like with all great actors, he's very talented. Now, when I sometimes think of different actors and what they could do with this character, and I just think with what he did as Tyrion, I think he could do something extremely special as the Doctor. We need to look at the Doctor with new eyes. I think, thanks to Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall, I mean, Stephen Moffat did some great things with Doctor. There's no question about that. But let's say the Stephen Moffat experiment was a mixed bag, and certainly what Chris Chibnall's done thus far just hasn't worked. Hasn't worked at all. As I say, the first 3 episodes of season 11, you've heard me say this before, but I'll remind you of it. I thought they were strong Doctor Who episodes. And then from episode 4 onwards, it became very problematic, mostly boring. I think this is my issue. And obviously, he's had a lot of problems with the BBC this time round because they said to him, we want you to invoke what Russell T Davies did with this show. And it's difficult to ask someone to, do what the other guy did, because you're not coming from that other guy's perspective, are you? You're coming from someone who just, can only come from their own way of doing things. Now, Chris Chibnall's a bit of a difficult person to get a handle on, because you kind of think about it and you think, is he a good writer? Well, obviously he's a good writer. He did Broadchurch season 1, which was one of the best pieces of fiction I've ever seen. One of the best written pieces of TV I've ever seen. But you look at something with people sometimes and you think, well, yes, okay, he's talented. But is he coming from a political agenda? Is he coming from a representational agenda? And does he put good storytelling and good characters behind that? Well, I think that's obvious. Now, I think with Broadchurch, it was the first thing he was going to do for himself. And he wanted to set down a marker, and he did. And once it became successful, of course, he could do whatever he wanted with the second and the third season. The second and the third season of Broadchurch are no way as good as the first season. Now, that's understandable, but already you could see, especially with the third season, he was really gunning for men. He was doing a storyline about rape. Again, there was lots of commentary. There was a guy working in a garage with some pictures of naked women. So, of course, that makes him a rapist. Ridiculous stuff, but this is how these crazy people's mind works. So if we're going to have Peter Dinklage as the Doctor, who are we going to have as the showrunner? I think I'm going to get attacked for this suggestion. Because actually, this would be very good for representation. Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Now, I do have issues with her being involved with James Bond, just because I think she has an agenda with James Bond. But the point being, because she's done such a good job with Killing Eve, she could turn Bond around. Nobody knows. We will find out. We will find that out very quickly. But there's no question with Phoebe Waller-Bridge. In fact, Phoebe Waller-Bridge could act. I mean, let's be honest here, right? Peter Dinklage would be my number one pick, right? But with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, she could show-run the show and perform the show. Now, I made a similar suggestion with Peter Capaldi. Peter Capaldi has all the talents. And there was a rumour that he was going to take the show over from Stephen Moffat and he was going to star and run the show and write and produce it in the lot. It would have been a lot to ask of someone. But I think Peter could have done it because I think Peter has a better handle than Stephen Moffat of what Doctor Who could and should be. Now, I know Phoebe Waller-Bridge is a controversial pick, but if you think about it, she has everything. Because she's actually gifted. She is. The woman is funny. She knows how to write. She wrote something like Killing Eve, which is dead serious, isn't it? But she's done something hilarious like Fleabag. So, look, I think she would make a great Doctor, and I think that she would really write it brilliantly. So that's another option. Of course, Phoebe Waller-Bridge playing the Doctor and running the show is going to make a lot of people angry, and I understand that. But at least she's got the talent. So, all right, if we put Phoebe Waller-Bridge to one side, because she is a controversial pick, it's a pick that I would have there. It's a pick because I think she could do a good job, because she is very creative. And even though, you know, she is a woman, I think she does put the creative element before the SJW element, before the representation commentary. She's a creative person, and she puts the art before everything. And I think that's important. And she is a feminist, there's no question about that. She has very strong opinions, but when someone's talented, you have to put the other things to one side. So absolutely. So, I mean, my number one pick for showrunner, to be honest with you, has always been Peter Jackson. It's been Peter Jackson ever since I knew the guy was interested. Because at the end of the day, he has done some films, he's produced some films, but he's doing very little right now. If this is his dream job, and I've heard that it is, I think Peter Dinklage as the Doctor and Peter Jackson as a showrunner would be absolutely fantastic. It's something I'd be very, very excited about. I personally think that Phoebe Waller-Bridge will get the gig at some point. I really do. And I understand why that's controversial, but I think she could do an interesting job. But for some people, it would never be accepted. And I also empathise with that. So Peter Dinklage as the Doctor and Peter Jackson as the showrunner, I think we will have something totally amazing. It is important that they don't Hollywood up the Doctor. But to be honest with you, isn't it what Russell T Davies did anyway? I mean, really, he made the Doctor into a leading man. And before RTD came in, that's not what the show was. But really, Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant were your old-fashioned leading men. He cast the Doctor as someone with a great presence. Now, the Doctor always had great presence, but it's like your Brad Pitts or your Bruce Willises. When they star in a film, they dominate it. And I think this is what Eccleston and Tennant did with the part. And I think Peter Dinklage would do the same thing. I mean, they would be my number one picks for sure at the end of the day. And just a little bit far behind would be Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I think, as I say, people won't like that suggestion, but I think we have to look outside the box. There's no question about it. I can't see a reality where Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker get to do a season 13 of Doctor Who, of New Who. To me, it just doesn't seem viable. I know for a fact that he has fallen out with them many times because they came in after season 11 and they had some very aggressive ideas on what he should do because they weren't happy with what happened, because when you're not selling merchandise, when the show is splitting the audience, that isn't good for business. And, you know, they came in and they were interfering. I think this is both a good thing and a bad thing, because when you're kind of directing a creative where to go too much, it could become a bigger mess than we ever had before. And that sounds impossible, doesn't it? But I don't see them doing another season after this one. It'll be interesting when this is announced. I've always kind of said this to you guys. It's interesting. When is the best moment? I mean, we know they haven't been at comic conventions either. I mean, they were at San Diego last year. This year, they have not been at San Diego. I think that's telling. And I think the only time that Chris Chibnall's come out is when the former Doctor Who producer died. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, he he made some comments, some nice comments about him. But apart from that, it's been very rare. He hasn't commented. He barely said, I don't think he said one syllable about season 12, and that's telling. So I think he's finished, and I think that Jodie Whittaker is finished after season 12. So once this is announced, we can really get our teeth into doing some videos about the future. And I think the future could be well served with Phoebe Waller-Bridge or Peter Jackson. And most certainly, I think Peter Dinklage or Phoebe Waller-Bridge will make great doctors. I don't think they will go for another woman. I think they may give that a rest. But I think Peter Dinklage ticks everyone's boxes. If you're into the representation dynamic, then he ticks all the boxes. He's a great actor. He would get everyone excited. And all the Americans who don't even watch Doctor Who would be excited. And the ratings would be sky high. So as long as they got his first episode right, they could do something extremely special. So please comment down below and tell me what you think. Do you think I'm losing it over my suggestion that Phoebe Waller-Bridge could be a great pick to write and produce and star as the Doctor? Or would you prefer Peter Jackson and Peter Dinklage? Please comment down below. And also, what are your picks for the future of Doctor Who? You've heard mine. I've got lots more. But they're my immediate thoughts on what should happen next. And I want to know what yours are as well.